Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Nic and I discuss leadership versus management. We talk to Brandon Gabler about networking for your next job, archaeology, and career development. And finally, Brandon said every archaeologist started out wanting to be a paleontologist. Here are some fun facts about paleontology. It is the study of the history of life on Earth as based on fossils. The term dinosaur was first coined by Richard Owen in 1824. And the holy mammoth went extinct 1,000 years after the pyramids were built. Interesting.
I think you said holy mammoth.
You did say holy. The holy mammoth.
It says holy. You typed holy.
It says Wally.
I'm just doing my job and reading the notes.
Well, it says Wally mammoth. That's an outtake. Oh my god. The Wally mammoth, as we all know. Keep that in there.
I'm just blindly reading over here. Okay. And the woolly mammoth went extinct 1,000 years after the pyramids were built. How about that?
I almost just want to leave it.
Yeah. Yep.
Kinda.
I think we should. That was brilliant.
Poor Laura.
Hey, I don't listen, so whatever you do,
okay.
you do.
Okay.
Hit that music.
SWCA Environmental Consultants has been helping clients across industries navigate environmental challenges for more than 40 years now. Founded in 1981, SWCA has grown from a small team in Flagstaff, Arizona, to becoming a global 100% employee-owned environmental consulting firm with more than 1,600 employees and 40 offices, providing a full spectrum of environmental services: planning, natural and cultural resources management, permitting, regulatory compliance, water resources, ecological restoration, and disaster and resilience. SWCA is a recognized leader for bringing sound science and creative solutions to our clients throughout the United States and beyond. We're also excited to announce that EPR is hosting a second AMA on Wednesday, March 27th at 6 p.m. Eastern. This AMA will feature past guests from backgrounds in academia to target our students and career-seeking listeners. It will be held on YouTube Live, and you can head over to Environmental Professionals' YouTube page right now and subscribe for notifications. Let's get to our segment.
It's like when there's I've heard the phrase, like when you have a challenge with a group, or like when morale is low, right? The simplest way to change morale is change leadership. Almost always that changes the way things are done, regardless of whether it's good or bad. It's just different. And I thought that was an interesting take. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because if you change morale, if you change leadership and it goes to a worse place, you will not improve morale. So I think
Yeah, who said that?
Yeah, it was one person on our meeting yesterday, and I was like,
I don't think changing leadership is an easy solution.
No, it wasn't considered an easy solution.
Okay.
That was something that would change morale regardless of whether it was the right thing to do and necessary thing to do. It's like, if you change leadership, you change morale.
Oh, interesting.
I think there's a truth to that, but it can change morale for the worse as well as for the better. So
right, yeah. It has to be intentional. You can't just be like, well, let's just change it to anybody, because then we'll just have different. Like, that doesn't make sense.
No. But it is interesting. I think new leaders do change the way that groups work, and what one leader represented is not the same as what another one is. And when you have changes in leadership, I think they're always it's a new puzzle.
You see that less often in companies, and you see that more often in nonprofits, where they're changing, if there's a board or something and you're changing the leadership every year or two. And it really does, like, 1 year morale and motivation is great, and the next year it's not. And that's a lot of times just because of again, back to role models, what is the leader doing? If they're not taking the lead and doing something, then no one else is either. So I think if a company decides to change leadership, it has to be very intentional, and you don't want to remove someone who is creating you. I mean, it goes more back to, like, what kind of culture do you want? And is there one leader who is leading you in that direction? Well, why would you get rid of them or replace them? But you have to figure out which of the leaders are contributing to what you want and which ones aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, like you say, if we say we could come back to like leadership versus management, but like it's one of the challenges I think we see with some leaders, it's like, well, this is the stuff we have to get done and we need to execute it. And so you're going to do what I tell you to do. Like, that's management, right? You're task oriented. You're very short-term focused, very like, this is what needs to get done. You need to do it. And it's a weird thing. And like another part of this that I thought of that I want your opinion on, it's like leaders, teach leaders that they're coaching future leaders, and like good leaders spend, it's a statistic, right? Who knows how true it is, but it's like they spend 80% of their time training and coaching and 20% of their time executing. And like, even in my position, I have felt that. I have very much felt like, oh, I'm doing a lot more talking than I am typing, right, so to speak. So it kind of makes sense, but I don't know. I wanted to hear your perspective on it. Is it really that drastic? Is there?
I think it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, a manager could be doing the same thing. Manager can be delegating everything and then sitting back and just waiting for reports to roll in. So I think there's more to it than just like how much time you're doing versus how much time you're talking. But yeah, I mean, leaders are more concerned with the direction that everyone is headed. A manager just wants to know if the boxes have been checked and the responsibilities and roles have been finished. So did you turn your reports in on time? Is this up to the quality of what we're supposed to be turning in? But the leader says, okay, is this the quality of what we want to be turning in? And is it satisfying our client? And is my employee happy? And are we doing it efficiently? And, is this going to help us next quarter? And. So I think really managers are just a little bit more myopic than the leaders who have to look forward and say, is this ship sailing in the right direction?
Super well said, like almost too well said. Myopic, amazing word.
Word of the day.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I think that's a very good way of looking at it, right? Like it's almost like trying to see the forest through the trees, kind of thing, where it's very big picture matters. You have to have both, right? You have to have some awareness of short term, but if you're not even thinking about long term, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So, and that doesn't mean, because a manager, if you're a manager, a lot of times, like especially in environmental, you were hired to be a manager. It isn't your job to look forward towards the vision. However, some people are natural leaders and they're going to. And for me, when I was managing my team, I was very much looking forward and saying, okay, what projects can we get so my employees stay satisfied and they don't want to leave? So it's a mindset, a lot of it.
Yeah, I think you're totally true. And, some people don't think about it. Some people just, like you say, it's automatic. It's like, I think with everything, if you're an athlete or whatever it is, everybody has a certain natural ability, right? Some people are better at things than others. But true top of the, craft, regardless of what that craft is, almost always there are people who are dedicated to doing better or getting better, learning, and not just being like, well, I'm good at this, so I'll just stay here and I'm set. And like true leaders, like the pinnacle of the profession, work hard at it. And they try new things, but they're practicing all the time. I wish people could understand, like even like any kind of athlete, right? They're like, oh man, I could do that if they paid me millions of dollars. Okay. You got to do the work to get the millions of dollars. And it's not easy. Even when they've made it to the top, staying there is very difficult as well. So you've got to be able to continue to put the work in to get what you want. And nobody likes to hear that. I think it's even like influencers is another great example, right? You can want to do that all you want, but like I know Mr. Beast works 15 hours a day, right? That's how much time it takes for him to do the things that he does, right? Super popular, but very dedicated, right? Very dedicated to doing the job, and not everybody's up for that.
Yeah, for sure. And before we top things off here, like being just a manager is okay if that's the expectation for your job and your role. If you want to advance, because beyond manager is leaders. Like, let's not make that a gray area. You want to advance above managing a team. Leadership is a skill and has multiple skills to be learned and developed and honed to be able to move up and advance that way.
I couldn't agree more. That's a great place to stop. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to our interview. Welcome back to EPR. Today we have Brandon Gabler on the show. Brandon has a PhD in anthropology and archaeology and is a registered professional archaeologist and currently the Strategic Growth Director for the Great Lakes Midwest region at SWCA Environmental Consultants. Welcome, Brandon.
Hey, Nick, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on here. First of all, that's a lot of really wonderful stuff behind your resume there. But let's talk a little bit about your new role at SWCA first.
Sure. I've joined SWCA as of last fall, and I'm really helping the Midwest and Great Lakes teams here grow to work with more of our clients throughout the whole Midwest region, really. And that's growth in terms of what services we're offering the clients that we already work for, the agencies and groups like NPS and others that we're already doing work for, but also adding to that list and helping us grow our staff. In addition to that, we've got a great office in Chicago where it's been established for over 10 years now. We have 10 or so staff in Michigan, another 7 or 8 folks in Cincinnati. We have a really solid 11 or 12-year-old office in Pittsburgh. And we're just looking to grow everything that we can do from a science and creativity solution standpoint on the environmental consulting world for our clients in this region.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. So, Tony, we haven't talked a lot about this on the show, actually, but, you worked for a different company before and now you switched roles. So what was that like? Do you have any advice for people who are switching companies when you do change from one to another? I mean, they're different kinds of animals. Each company has its own organization, but what was the experience like for you?
I will hinge on something that I've heard on this podcast over and over. It's about working with your networks. The folks that we have met along the way that play a role in how we communicate, how we work with a team, how we grow into a new position. It's all based on those relationships that we have. So I did the exact same thing. The advice is to reach out to those people in your professional networks, in your personal life, that you've worked well with before in any capacity. The American Cultural Resources Association is that framework for me. It's been a great place to get to know the other cultural resources firms in our industry and has allowed me to build a lot of solid relationships with folks that then I basically used to my advantage as I was looking for a new role, and worked out perfectly to fit into a company like SWCA, where the things that I value most, the teamwork, the collaboration, the one company approach to everything we do is first and foremost. And so joining a team like this, where everything we do is based on, it's our motto, but sound science, creative solutions. The fact that we're able to do that company-wide, countrywide, means that it's really easy to integrate into a team here in the Midwest and help build on the relationships they've already got, the ones that I've got, and merge those things into one. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. And so whenever you go through this kind of process, which is always, I'd say it's a little challenging, it's a little daunting kind of to get started, like, okay, I've got a network and we're going to look for a new opportunity for me. But when you do that, you end up getting multiple offers at once. And so you had that also be your experience. So is it just the company culture that allowed you to make that decision for SWCA, or did you have to really weigh a lot of different things?
It was a lot of different things. It came down to a small handful of offers, and one of the consistent themes between all of them was the company culture. Each spot felt like a place that I knew I would want to be successful, not just could be successful.
Right.
Whether it was the interview process that felt right, or the people who I knew from previous places that were at those companies. And I figured, well, if that person is successful and happy here, I'll probably have the same luck, right?
Right.
Those were the kinds of things that I boiled it down to, and SWCA ended up with the highest percentage of those factors in its favor. Not to mention that, and I'll go back to this, you used to be at HDR with me. The employee-owned culture is really important. It's really cool. You can tell how much it plays into people's decisions on how hard they're working, how much they're willing to work for each other. And that weighs in and really impresses me when it comes down to company A versus B or C, and played into that choice quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Like, we haven't actually talked about employee-owned companies either. So what do you find is the draw? It's easy to say that, okay, it's employee-owned, but what does that actually mean, and how does that actually play out in the company culture?
Right. It shows itself most in the work ethic and the results side of everything we do. I mean, we're still a for-profit company. We do private sector work. We do a lot of work for other private sector companies throughout the country. And at the end of the day, we're a business, and in a business, you have to successfully make money, right? We can't just fund the projects and then not get paid by our clients.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
But the knowledge by all of our employee owners that everything we bring in from a profit standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, it's 100% reinvested in every person who works here. We're 100% employee owned, and 100% of the full-time employees are owners,
right,
which means everybody is literally working for everybody else. The end of year profits, the bonuses, the perks, everything is not going to a single owner or private owner or a small subgroup of owners. It's back in the hands of everybody, or reinvested in the growth of the company, which is also critical in order to be a successful consulting group.
Mm-hmm.
So that plays out nonstop in kind of a feedback loop with the way we approach clients, the way we approach our projects. Everybody's doing their part to take the best approach to getting the work done the right way, rather than worried about what's coming over their shoulders from the owner at the top that just is this mysterious black box, or who knows.
Right. Yeah. The final boss in any video game. Yeah. No. Yeah. Which makes sense. You're basically your own shareholders, right? That's kind of the way to look at it. That's pretty cool. So you're in this role. You're in a development role. Yeah. You're looking to build business, build on what you've already got there. Have you been in that role before? And if so, what are those tips and tricks you use to kind of keep, on top of that? Because it's a lot of work. It really is.
It is. And what's really nice about the role I'm in now is that it's the sole focus of what I'm doing. I still get involved a little bit in the technical side of projects, more of a peer review and advisor type that standpoint. But from a business development side, I've always done some of that wherever I've worked. And it's a great thing to be able to focus more solely on that. I think you and I both came out of that seller doer model at HDR, which we all are always selling and doing. It's doing good work for a client is marketing. It is business development, because then they're going to come back to us.
Right.
But when you're in a strictly business development or marketing role, what we really get to focus on is those same things that I mentioned about looking for a new role. It's building relationships with the clients that we work with. Mm-hmm. It's creating a need that they probably knew they had, but making sure they realize we're the right folks to do it, whether it's geographic positioning or best in market science or whatever our approach is. But honestly, a lot of it is just the great communication and follow through with clients and teaming partners, and everything through the internal project managers and field staff and everybody else. If we're communicating the needs, the goals, the required workload effectively, then the marketing and business development ends up coming naturally anyway. We're doing the right work. We're finding the right people to do the work instead of trying to keep it in a specific office or in a specific person's hands. My goal has always been to find the right person to do the work. And if I think it's better to find a teaming partner that does a certain service line way better than we do, I'll go and do that. And what happens in the long run, that same client trusts us, comes back to us to work with us again, because we found them the right solution. It didn't matter who does it. And that's really, I think, the best spot to be when it comes to business development. Be what the client or the agency needs instead of what you think you want to do all the time, if that makes sense.
It really does. It's like you have to be a little humble in this business. I think ego can get in the way of a lot of good work sometimes. It's like, well, we can do everything. It's like, even coming back to it, like, sometimes even if you could do it, right? How busy are your staff? How worn out are they? If they're exhausted and, you're like, hey guys, don't worry. We got one more $1 million project for everyone to deal with. Are we hiring anyone new? No, we're just going to keep going with what we got. Good luck, and I think that's a lot of the ways, it's a perfect way to cover it. You have to take a lot of different factors in. You have to throw your ego away. It's hard to do. Gosh, it's hard for me to do sometimes, but yeah, it's important. It's super important.
Yeah. And it's a delicate balance. We need to keep our staff busy. We want to grow our own staff, our own service lines. And we do have to pay attention very closely to things like burnout. I know other episodes of this have talked about the same thing, but there's a fine balance between being overworked and underworked. The CRM industry for cultural resources, the environmental compliance industry is no different. How often do we joke that there's never the exact right amount of work?
Yeah, exactly.
There's just never. You're either scrambling to get it or scrambling to perform. Right. And part of what we try to do is, again, by having a one company approach, by having a company culture that allows for that, we can level workloads, especially seasonality, by having those teams collaborating between regions, between offices. When it's snowy and frozen up north, a lot of those staff can work with our offices down south or out west and stay busy, stay on top of projects, but also apply their expertise and bring new ideas that the local folks wouldn't have thought of anyway. And that's how you grow new solutions, new creativity aspects to what we do, be able to offer new services to clients that didn't know we could do that. Right.
Yep. Exactly. And it's funny, like, so let's dive into archaeology then. Let's talk about that. We love to, and since Laura's not here, I can do this. She won't get mad at me. But actually, we were interviewing for people for a mid-level for our group. And one of the people said, why did you get into archaeology? And his answer was Indiana Jones. And he's like, and so we do like to ask, do you actually spend time digging in the dirt? I know typically there is that. It's not quite Indiana Jones, but there's a lot of dirt digging. So what is our day-to-day life for an archaeologist?
Well, for one who's currently me, there's not a lot of day-to-day archaeology anymore, which we've talked about. I'm in the business development side, but there was for a while. I don't know. I guess I got into the field because just like I'll go out on a limb and say 98% of archaeologists, we all wanted to be paleontologists. And then somehow ended up with archaeology. No, that was it. It's terrible, but I loved dinosaurs as a kid. And then got steered during high school in the direction of archaeology as a path that I could go to an undergraduate that had a great focus on that, Mercyhurst College, Erie, PA. Oh, yeah. And went from there to the University of Arizona where I did grad school. And that's where I enjoyed archaeology in undergrad, but I really loved it in grad school. And between the coursework in grad school and the field seasons, the field work I did in the summers at Los Alamos, at the National Lab in New Mexico, it was just outstanding. And no question that the archaeology of the Southwest U.S. is some of the best that we have in the country. And that's where it was, eat, sleep, and breathe archaeology. Yeah. And it's hiking, surveying, playing in the dirt, finding artifacts, learning analysis, learning new skills each time a different project came up or a different phase of a project came up, which just enhances the enjoyment of being an archaeologist.
Yeah, of course.
Doing the same exact analysis day after day after day after day would get old. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks in this business, all of cultural resources, archaeology, architectural history, tribal relations, and any other aspect of what we do would answer the same thing. The variety of the types of projects and the types of work that we get involved in is really what keeps us going, keeps it fun.
Yeah. And I love that too. I love that you said that you wanted to be a paleontologist. I actually remember as a kid, Jurassic Park came out at a very pivotal moment for a lot of kids. And for me, I was like, I love dinosaurs, and I had to learn everything about them, I had to do it. And I even, I remember getting, I think it was for my birthday, a paleontology, discovery kit, right? So it was just a block of clay, and I had to work the soil to get to the bones, whatever. And then when I actually did it, ended up being just 4 slabs that you put together. It's the easiest puzzle I've ever done in my life. So disappointed, right? And I don't know if it was that, or I don't know, somewhere along the way, biology took over. But
Nick, maybe you just were a really good paleontologist, and you don't
was
even
so
know.
good that I was like, this is not even a challenge for me. You're right. I was like, I need a harder level of work life. This is too easy.
Yeah, right. So instead, give me the complexity of all natural life on Earth.
Right.
Go with biology.
Oh, that's too funny. But it's funny. So you mentioned a little bit about like the career and how you worked in the early part of it too, and like the other options that you have. There's academia, industry, etc. But people who are where you were a few years ago, we'll be safe and say a few years ago, when you were just starting out, right? What advice do you have for them? Like, where do you see the industry going?
Excellent question, and I'll echo some other folks from the CRM side that have been on the podcast and others that we talk with a lot through ACRA.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few facets that are critical. Writing.
Yeah.
Top of the list of needs, top of the list of skills to be efficient and therefore quick and good, not just quick, not just good, but both.
Right.
But then the components that go along with being an archaeologist or an architectural historian, you need analysis skills, some artifact class, some level of spatial analysis, or at least a working knowledge of GIS, because it's so tied into everything we do. Even if you're not creating maps for yourself, being able to use the data that somebody else has pulled together and just click through a series of ArcGIS online web maps, or somebody's using QGIS in a small business because it's a really efficient, low-cost option to make great stuff. You still need to be able to use those data to understand what things you might encounter during a project and to summarize what you found afterwards. But you can't neglect the ability to analyze the actual physical objects that we've found while in the field. And I say objects because it's the buildings, the structures, bridges, culverts, etc., as much as it's the lithic debitage, the arrowheads, the projectile points, the cool ceramics, the everything else. You don't need to be an expert in every single class of artifact or every single era of buildings, but having any level of analysis focus is a huge need from a skill set standpoint in our industry right now, because we need those folks who, especially as there's more efforts being placed on limiting the amount of materials that are ending up in museums, because not everything does belong in a museum because there's not enough space for everything. So the importance of doing quality in-field analysis is more important than ever. I know when Jonna was on, she talked a lot about curation and the issues with excess materials being stored.
Yeah.
Echoing her points that being a good analyst of some artifact class when you're an entry-level field technician, a new to the industry archaeologist, means that you've got a skill set out there in the field right now that helps alleviate the crisis in the long run.
Yeah.
You're certainly more employable both by academia and the private industry. And then to be able to write about it afterwards, even better.
Yeah. And I think it's funny you say writing. It's one of the greatest skill sets you can have, especially early on. Because like you say, I don't do nearly as much writing as I used to, but being good at it got me where I am. Do I love it? No. Did I realize its value? Yes.
But it also contributes to your communication skills in every other aspect of the work you do. So if you're a good, efficient, skilled writer on a technical report, you're more likely to be a good, efficient, skilled writer when you're putting together a proposal for a client or an email to a colleague asking them to help you on a project. And instead of sounding like a jerk. Pompous jerk or an unintelligent bum, you actually come across representing exactly what's needed to be done and nobody has any questions. So it goes into every aspect of what we do. And if you're more skilled at that aspect of what we do, there's also less stress involved in the whole process.
Yeah. It's funny. I kind of think of it like, when I was younger, I read a ton of books, about everything, right? Fiction, nonfiction, whatever. Loved it. And then my mom was like, you don't read books anymore. I'm like, Mom, they invented the internet. I read more than I ever have in my whole life, right? It's like, that's what's changed, is just the technology and the ability to do that. But even with writing, it's like, yeah, I don't write reports nearly as much. Do you know how many emails I write? It's so many. And so even that, you're totally right. It's a point I hadn't even thought of. It's just like the skill has been around and it's going to stay a skill. And the better you can work on it now. I mean, long run, it's helped me immensely. In lots of different ways. So we could talk about that forever. I know we've got a few other things I want to get to before we let you go, but you mentioned ACRA, and we've had a couple folks on from ACRA before. How long have you been a member with them?
Technically, good question. Around 2012-ish, ACRA is an institution that it's a trade association, lobbying group, business organization, basically. So only companies are members. Individuals other than students aren't members on their own. And in 2012-ish, when with HDR in the Virginia office, we won a contract with the Delaware DOT, who then basically stipulated that they wanted their consulting CRM companies to be ACRA members.
Oh, wow.
And since then, I've only worked for ACRA member firms. So I've been circumstantially involved in ACRA since 2012. Actively involved since about 2017. Right. I started attending the annual conference then, meeting folks, got added to a committee, I think the communications committee, shortly after the 2017 annual meeting, because I wanted to get involved. I thought it was really cool. Yeah. And since then, I've joined in with the membership committee. I was on the board for a year and then was elected treasurer, and I've been treasurer since October of last year, helping keep our finances in line. It's something I never thought I'd end up doing, but it's really cool.
It's funny is I'm the treasurer for NAAP. So nice. We should share notes.
Yeah. And we're partner organizations, which is an awesome experience. It's great for the members of both to be able to share those webinar classes and other resources. And frankly, if you're out there looking for work in the CRM industry, I'm biased. I think you should only be working for ACRA member firms because it's a really positive benefit for staying in touch with what's going on in Congress, in your local and state agencies that are passing regulations that impact the CRM industry. And similarly with NAAP, by being there and hearing the latest and either greatest or not so greatest impacts to funding sources or grant programs or regulation changes, you're able to react, pivot, flex the business that you do to make sure that we're still able to meet the needs that our clients are going to need to get their projects completed and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of benefits just to being an employee at a member organization of either one of those fine institutions.
And I mean, we talk about networking. It's a great way to do that, right? You have a large institution with lots of different larger firms, and larger and smaller firms, I'm sure. You have this network that you start growing. And it's funny, you talk about active involvement, right? You're the treasurer. That's so much more valuable than just being there. Being on the board, so much more valuable than just being there, because people see you, they notice you, they recognize you because you're part of the leadership team. So I always love tossing that advice out there to people. But when is your next conference?
It is this fall. The annual conference for ACRA is every fall, typically either the second half of Labor Day week or the third or fourth week in September. And I believe it's the latter this year. Yeah. It is in Albuquerque, New Mexico this fall. Very cool. I'm excited about that. I always love going back to New Mexico. Yeah. It is, from an archaeology standpoint, it's wonderful, but the food. Oh, man. Much like you and Laura talk about on the pod all the time. Yeah. We travel for food. We travel and experience things through our stomachs, right?
Oh, yeah. My favorite thing, people talk about, the red, green Christmas, which is a thing. It's a real thing for sure. And it's great and it's wonderful in every place. I love to ask what's their hottest one because that's usually their best one.
Mhm.
But
I
one
agree.
of the things, the secrets, I think, are sopapillas. And I think most people don't even know what the heck those are. And they're so good. They're so good. I'm like, I ate lunch and now I want to eat lunch again. Like that's how good they are. You know, you go to a good place. Yeah. See, I'm literally, my mouth's watering.
Nick, that was a rude drop for me and everybody else that's listening to the podcast now, because you've just created a cascade effect, and
yes.
local supermarkets will be sold out of anything fried bread related. The conference is September 26th to 29th this fall, by the way.
Right. Yeah. It's I guess so. Aside from the food, which is going to be great. What are you looking forward to at the conference?
As always, reconnecting with folks is really the top of my list. It's kind of an easy cop out, but the value of the conference is in building not only our own personal professional relationships, but the teaming relationships that come from that. I don't know how much work would get done in the CRM industry or the environmental sphere in general without having great relationships with teaming partners we can trust. And a ton of that happens at the annual ACRA conference.
Yeah.
So between that and honestly, one of the better sessions every single year is our government relations updates. And we're in an election year. The conference will be 6 weeks before the general election. There will be a lot of information shared about what the resulting election could do to the regulatory side of things. We'll probably have a pretty good update about the potential changes to the Army Corps' Appendix C, which is a proposed rule change right now, and it's under review. It's in the public comment phase. By September, we probably will have more info about that, if not a full change. So the conference is quite likely going to be loaded with just an absolute ton of information critical to the whole environmental compliance world.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. We just did a conversation at my job. I led a discussion about the Chevron doctrine and how that's going to impact a lot of what we do from an environmental policy standpoint. There's a lot of really interesting case studies that are going to be decided this session. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's really a really fascinating thing. So yeah, more to come on that. We'll have to have somebody back and talk to us about how it went and all that. But now it's time to get into a section we like to call field notes, which is where we talk about our memorable moments in the field doing the work that we love. And we always encourage our listeners to share those stories using hashtag field notes so we can read them on future episodes. But I know that you've had a long, like I said, maybe you're not in the field that much now, but I know you've got a long history and a lot of good stories. So do you have one for us?
I do. I have at least one. We'll start with the first. And to preface it, I really try not to take myself too seriously all the time. So even though this is a story from the field, it is definitely on the lighthearted side. And I was working in Los Alamos at the National Lab doing excavations at a series of very small structures called field houses. And we were working out in the canyons. I was working with Craig Lockhart, who also was at HDR with us in Virginia.
He's a great guy.
Greg was the crew chief. He was the field lead, field director for the summer, couple of summers that I was there. And every day Greg would get pumped and the crew's out in the field together. And he said, all right, we're going to find the golden mask today. And he'd pick someone different to say it to each day. And every day it was, we really did have an amazing job, an amazing area. The weather was perfect. The archaeology was awesome. So Greg was always excited. And this summer I was camping on a ski hill, 9,500 feet elevation. And I decided that maybe Greg needed to find his golden mask. And so I sat there for a week or so, carving this mask out of a piece of bark from the stump of a tree. And I got a can of gold spray paint, sprayed it. And during the next field day, when one of the archaeologists was away from their excavation unit writing up some notes, they had left some back dirt in their unit.
Right.
So nobody saw me. I slide the mask underneath the pile of dirt and just turned back to doing my own thing. A few minutes later, the archaeologist who was member of the San Ildefonso Pueblo and is now, I believe, a professor either at UPenn or somewhere pretty cool. He's doing great stuff. He might even be back working with his home Pueblo. His nickname was Woody, but Dr. Joseph Aguilar, if you're out there listening. He gets back to his unit and goes to scoop the dirt, and you see his face just go completely. He knew what happened. But he pulls the thing up and flashed it over to Greg. Hey, Greg, we got it. We can finish now. I think I may have made Greg's summer that year because somebody finally found the gold mask. He had it on display in his office for years afterwards. It was just awesome. It's just fun. We got to have fun out there. It's part of what we do. As if we weren't already finding really cool stuff, we found something else.
Well, it's funny though, because I think we joke about Indiana Jones, and I think that's the mystique. And the truth is, obviously, most of the time it's like, oh, here's another rusty nail from 100 years ago. Okay, great. I got 7 of those. How about you? Oh, we got 12 and nothing else? Great. Awesome. And so it's.
or the classic project of, well, did you find anything? No. Great. Client's happier that way. Right. And that's okay. That's part of what we do. But we need something to add some spark and some fun now and then.
And like there really are. There are, no matter what you do, there's always cool projects. There's always stuff that pops up. There's always unique things that happen, and getting to experience some of that like in your career is really cool. It's really fun. I love that story. I love it. You got to have fun. It's like, and there's stories you never live down too, right? There's always, as a friend of mine, every time I see her, I was like, remember that time that a turkey flew over your head and you ran away? Remember that? I do. I remember being in a clearing, turkey flies over her head. She screams, gone, right? And it's just gone. And I'm like looking around like, I don't know what happened. And then I look and there's a turkey nest. I'm like, come on. So that's what I think of every time I see her. And that's the joy of working in the field. It really is. But look, I only have you for a few more minutes here. And again, Laura's not here, so I get to talk sports as much as I want. And you root for the right teams. That's important to me. So you're a big Pittsburgh fan, just like I am. But that means Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates, for those of you who are wondering. And, storied franchises and... but not in my lifetime when it comes to the Pirates.
There are certain other stories about the Pirates that not so much. And I think, unfortunately, much like you, we kind of grew up in the same era of Pirates teetering on success and then completely dropping off. I'm not that much of a baseball fan in general.
Right.
But hockey and football and black and gold through and through.
Where does it come from? Why Steelers? Why Pittsburgh?
I grew up in Northwest Pennsylvania, little town, St. Mary's. Shout out to Straw Brewery and nearby in Bradford, Zippo Lighters for anybody that doesn't know where St. Mary's is. We're a cool little town off in the Allegheny Forest.
There
roughly.
You go. Yeah.
It's too much of a generalization, but not too bad.
Right.
No, and it's a blue collar town. It's a sports town. And like everywhere else in Western Pennsylvania, if it's a sports town, it's going to be black and gold.
Yes.
So I mostly grew up before leaving my hometown. I was mostly into hockey. So it was Penguins. I was playing pond hockey and skating every winter on frozen mini golf ponds.
Wow.
Weird. They would flood a parking lot that was used for mini golf in the summer and then skating in the winter. And then, of course, developed into a football fan later. Yeah. And Steelers were the only team I could root for. Right. Now that I live in Michigan, I do have a soft spot for the Lions, and I'm absolutely loving watching them succeed finally.
Yeah, finally. I know, but it's funny because like at least for me, right? Like the Penguins were phenomenal in the 90s, like just phenomenal team. And so it was really cool to see them win and to be successful. My parents are more football than hockey. So hockey was second, but they were really good. And then I became an adult and we got, Sid the Kid and the Tom Brady of the NHL, which is very, very, very accurate statement. And then I moved to DC, and you can imagine living in a place where everyone's a Capitals fan. I even mention that I'm a Penguins fan and they won't talk to me ever again. It's just kind of, it's so funny. And would it be because I would tell them that Sidney Crosby is a better player than Ovechkin? Maybe, but they started it.
I'm sure that had nothing to do with it at all, Nick, right? No, and it was actually hard because I'm married into a Detroit family.
Oh, wow.
And so my father-in-law is very much a Red Wings and Lions, et cetera, fan. So the 08-09 years where it was the Red Wings Penguins back to back was a very stressful time.
I can only imagine.
I think it worked out well that each of us won one, because if it had been lopsided in either way, it might have been very silent following 20 years, right?
Right. Oh man, like I say, I wish we could talk more about it, but we are running out of time. So, is there anything that we didn't ask that you'd like us to?
I don't think so. I love that we covered the networking communication aspects so well, because they are, I think, every bit as critical to the environmental consulting world as EPR has ever claimed that they are. It's number one thing that we do is we're doing work as people for other people to get stuff done. The only thing we can really sell is our knowledge, our work, our labor. And so doing that in a siloed isolation doesn't work well for what we do.
No.
Make connections, make friends, make a great network for yourself, and have fun along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's like anything, right? If you're fundamentally decent, it'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Even if you're not. But it does. All right. Thanks, Brandon, so much for being here. Where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
Email's great. Brandon.Gabler, Gabler, at SWCA.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. Find me on there and send me a note. Love to connect.
Very cool. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's our show. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Bye.
See you, everybody.